The PPP government is bullish in pursuit of its promise to deliver 50,000 house lots over the next 5 years. Across the country, billions of dollars in contracts are being executed, developing existing schemes and creating new ones. The man chosen to lead the ambitious agenda is first-time Minister Collin Croal. He took us on a visit of some of the new areas being developed and spoke of the plan to meet the country's growing housing needs. You became Minister of Housing and Water in August 2020. Just describe to me what situation you found when you got there.
Well, I can't say this in one sentence. What the situation we found at the Ministry of Housing and Water was pretty chaotic, and things were being done in an ad hoc manner. But what struck me the most was to see, knowing the PPPC government that did for the housing program, and for all the years that has been one of the drivers of our economy, one of the drivers of our success stories. We have success stories all across our country, or when you go to the various housing areas that have been developed, housing schemes that have been developed as a result of the PPPC's commitment to ensure that we, as far as practical, work on a program for home ownership. So it was surprising that when the first thing we did was took a step back, assess what was happening at the ministry and what took place over the prior 5 years. And when you contrast that, we found some revealing stuff, and these included, for example, with a huge backlog. The backlog at that time was 70,000 waiting in the system, 70,000 eligible applicants who have applied, persons who have gone through the process. They have been interviewed, they have been categorized whether based on their income as to the level of the type of house lot they are eligible for. And so you have a system where 70,000. And that is why we aggressively in our manifesto, we committed to the people. We said to them, we will ensure that we will deliver in 5 years 50,000 house lots.
So, Minister, tell me what's the plan for this area?
Here is called Plantation One Repose. We've allocated about 203 for allottees. Significant in all of that is we have about 155 low-income bracket. And so the plan for here, it's twofold. Where we at now, this is part of work that we've started from last year, and that it was to open the access on this part, the front part of this plantation. And so we intend to move this to the next phase of putting the crusher on. And secondly, to further, if you look down in the south, you can see a lot of cane field, and we're accessing more land there. And so in this year, we have 2 contracts that have been signed to the tune of $166.3 million. And as part of that would be to open further land at the back there for allocations that have been made, as well, and to move the road to Crusher Run. Similarly here, as well as if you notice, there are some bridges, but we also need to put some pipe networks in place to ensure proper drainage.
How do you decide which areas to go in to develop housing areas?
Well, there's a process. The process starts by first of us acquiring the land. There's a process in which we go through. It depends. There are a number of agencies that we are normally involved with. That is Guyana Lands and Survey Commission, of course, has the overall custodian of all lands across Guyana. We also have Gaisuco as well as NISIL, for which over time lands have been vested to them for developmental purpose. And we work in conjunction with those agencies as a continuous process to acquire new lands. And wherever we can and it's suitable for housing, we go through that vesting process, get the necessary approval. Of course, we pay for it, although it's from agency to agency, and then put in for the budgetary resources so that we can put in place the infrastructure work for that area, for allocation. And hence, we are at this process, at this stage here in One Repose.
So in this particular area, what level of allottees are you putting in here? Low income, middle income, what?
Right, so we have about 155 low-income allottees. We have another 50 odd of what you consider middle income, and there are reserved a few for commercial, residential commercial purposes. And that is the format we're using for all of our new areas, because the front part of the community, you know, there are some, you need to streamline to have the necessary businesses that are suitable for the community.
And how do you decide who comes in here?
This goes through our allocation process, and that so you start, the process starts from when someone comes into the Central Housing and Planning Authority, or you can do that online. That's where you apply for an allocation. In that allocation process, you will indicate, well, of course, you have to state your address you were living in and the region for which you were applying. And so when we are making available lands for allocation, we go back into our LMS system. We try to identify persons on the East Coast. We call you when we're making that allocation and make that offer. So you go through that process. There's an offer. Once there's an acceptance, then you sign an agreement, and we move onwards to allocating.
And how soon will this area be ready?
This area, well, here where I am now, you'll recognize this will be ready within 6 months. The other additional portion that we're opening up before the year is finished.
Do you have, like, say you want to target so many house lots for Region 4, Region 5, do you do it like that? Or it depends on availability of land?
Well, we have the figures by regions for the request for allocations. In fact, if you go into our system, and this is something we started in August, we met a queue of about 70,000 persons waiting overall. You'll recognize majority of it is for Region 4. And so the heavy demand is Region 4 because of the capital city and the availability of work and jobs, and majority of the persons live here on the coastline. So we are continuously working to acquire additional lands. But there will come a time when, because here these are cane lands, former cane lands that we are acquiring. So Kaisuku too has their priority of lands that they intend to keep for their developmental purpose. And so it's an ongoing process. We all the time seeking new lands when opportunities become available. But for us, we try to, as far as possible, wherever we can get. We're here at Plantation Annandale. Where we are situated now is construction of a access bridge to access the area here, for which we have over 335 allocations that have been made. And the development of this area is part of our infrastructure work on the 2021 budget. Here at Annandale, what you're seeing now represents similarly a number of areas on the East Coast. That includes Strathspey, Bladen Hall, Vigilance, here at Annandale, Monrepose, LBI, and Cummins Lodge, for which this year we have allocations that have been made like other areas on the East Coast, for which we are doing the infrastructure work. There was a huge backlog in the conveyance section now. There's a section that's responsible for the processing of the titles and the transports. And now that you've, as a homeowner, as a lottee, you've completed your process, you've paid, you expect to now receive your title. And that too, you have a huge backlog of persons waiting years. And so that was another scenario. Another scenario we found is that allocations made for lands for which have not been vested to the Central Housing and Planning Authority. So the ownership has not been transferred. Hence, CHPA, although they allocated, could not move further than the allocation when persons are allocated to issue titles for those areas because it can't be processed. They don't own it.
Give me an example.
So an example, well, let me give you two examples of similar scenario. One is that one area we found in the name in Perseverance. The name on the document is not Perseverance for the area that they allocated. And so that we're correcting now to have that legal process change. There are a number of areas, like yesterday, let's use yesterday, we were in West Coast Berbice. There are areas in Bath, there are areas along the entire West Coast Berbice for which we have the allocations made, but we do not have those lands vested to us. There are a number of areas along in Region 3 and Region 4 for which we found such examples. Another scenario that we found too interesting was the allocation process, because you have allocations that were not necessarily being made in the using the queue system, going back into the LMS and
What's the LMS?
That's the system that when you apply and having gone through the interview, and because when you apply, you have to provide the necessary documents, and that will be our verification of who you are, as well as your income status and your address. You go through an interview process. Having completed that interview, then you're entered into our electronic database. So at any location, one of our locations, we can access online to verify Neil Marks. He has applied in 2020. Neil Marks applied on X date. Neil Marks is eligible for a middle income house. So all of that information is stated there. Likewise, so it's updated as you have the relevant information. And that is one of the reasons why persons have been coming at the ministry. When you see all that huge amount of persons daily, that is because they're coming to update the information we have in the system. So we found the allocations were not done in a systematic manner. And so those are some of those things we had to correct immediately. There were a lot of festering issues. And so we went about immediately to rectify all of that, strategize what we needed to do. And in the first year, we had only a couple of months to finish the year. That is why this year you saw the amount of money that was placed in the budget and the amount of money that we've just signed for our contracts for this year, because those are all for areas for which we have over 9,000 allocations that caters for in regions 3, 4, 5, and 6.
You're a first-time minister, and like you said, housing is a flagship program for the PPP. Do you feel pressure to deliver on the promise that the PPP made to give people 50,000 house lots?
Yes, you're correct. I'm first time, but no, I don't feel pressured. I feel privileged to be able to serve as a Minister of Housing and Water. It's one of those demanding ministry that, you know, every day we see there are a number of persons who are there at the ministry. Sometimes they want to see the minister many times to resolve issues, to resolve matters. Even as I go about my daily business, even on social activities, someone always put me in a corner and they're asking about an application that they've made. But I feel privileged, I feel honored to serve the People's Progressive Party civic government in the Ministry of Housing and Water. But I also feel even more honored that our president was the former Minister of Housing and Water, and he is my boss. And as the president, and he last served in that ministry when he was the minister, to ask me to serve as the Minister of Housing and Water, that for me, is certainly a privilege.
So how do you fix that housing problem? You say, like, every Wednesday morning, or every morning for that matter, people go there 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, trying to get in there, hoping that they'll get a house lot. How do you make the system more effective so that that doesn't happen anymore?
There are a number of things that need to be done, Neil, and which we've already started and which we're working on. Now, we have to examine why persons are coming. One, there are the persons who are now applying. Two, there are persons who, like as I said, want to update their information. Their status has changed. They have changed their address. They've changed their income. So they come to let us update the information that we have in the central database. 3, there are persons who have not been hearing about their application, and they want to be assured that they are there and they will be, looked at. 4th, and I've added this dimension, simply because it's our success story. And so in the 7 months plus that we're in office, a lot has been done. We have already allocated within the first 3 months. By the end of last year, we allocated 3,800 house lots. And we have much more to be done this year. And so as a result of persons seeing that we are allocating, they want to know and to be assured that we haven't forgotten them. And that is why I spoke just now about ensuring that the system works, ensure that we go back into the years and we have that allocation done for persons who are waiting. So once we have the areas that is available, that is identified for allocation, once we have the land vested to us, then we go into the system, identify where you have applied, which region, and then we call you. So that is one of the reasons why, that is overall why you see persons coming. But what are we doing? We've also enhanced the online system, and that too is something that, that was not in place. So you can go on to the chpa.gov.gy website. You can go click there and you can have that same information that you want to be updated. You can go there and have your document have it scanned and placed there. Upload it and we will receive it and we will do the necessary changes. Absolutely no reason then for you to come in if you want to make the changes. You can also go there and you can make your queries, and we will have someone responding to a follow-up to say yes. For example, a frequent query has been, can the Ministry of Housing say what year will I be allocated? I have applied X year. What we can do is just assure persons that they're in the system, we verify that you're there, and then we assure them. And to assure them that when we are ready for that particular year, we will call them. So we've made the online system, but we want to ensure the person utilize that online system. That is very much key, and that can be done anywhere in the country. And so you don't necessarily need to have all those amount of persons coming that you see at the ministry. There's another aspect that we're working on to improve the services that are being provided at the regional level. We have regional housing offices too. And so in regions 2, 3, 4, that is dealt with at our central ministry, region 5, 6, and region 9. And very shortly we'll be moving to appoint a regional housing officer in region 8. Region 7, sorry. We don't have much going on in region 7 because that is dealt with at the hinterland level. But the improvement of the regional offices will also ease that amount of person that you see coming, because we want to, for example, whether you're in region 6, you can come to the office at New Amsterdam at the regional housing office and have your matter dealt with, and rather than you have to travel to Georgetown to have it addressed. But there's another aspect. I've also, as part of my program, to ensure that we have public days or engagement with as much as possible with members of the public in the regions, in the communities, in the villages. And that is very important, because you also will have issues that fester on, which is another problem we have to address, is unregularized area, squatting, illegal occupation, whichever term you want to use. That is a big problem. And that is why we keep saying there's absolutely no need for anyone to be squatting. There's only one way to become eligible to have an allocation done. That is to go through the system, apply, and you can do that online, or you can do that through the submission of the forms in your regional offices or at Central Georgetown. But only one way, and then through the process you will be dealt with. Our 50,000 commitment for this 5 years, in this our first term, that certainly, for many persons, they think that is very ambitious. Now that you see the infrastructure work, the cost for the infrastructure work that will be required to achieve this objective, you realize that some persons are questioning that. But our government, we are committed. We are committed to ensuring that our manifesto commitments are maintained. We did the study, we knew what is happening, and so that is why the commitment that you saw in our manifesto is something that we are absolutely fixated on delivering. We're here at Ordnance Fortlands. There are two phases for which we are currently implementing infrastructure works. In order to access this area, however, you have to go through phase one. And so starting with our emergency budget we had last year, we had money received for access roads, and which we are on now. You can see, right now, you can see work is ongoing. This is to open areas, new areas for a total of 341 allocations. And so as we go further, you're actually moving to the main road. You can see traffic flowing in the background, and that will now provide access to the bridge, the road that runs along the bridge, access bridge. And so this year we are expecting to expend a minimum of $230 million. In fact, the contracts were signed early in the week, and that is for both phase 2 and 3.
And this will allow people to move in this year itself to start building?
Correct, and that is by the end of this year, all persons can be able to move in. Of course, in addition to what you expect here for the works, it includes leaving the road at a level of crusher run, putting in a number of culverts. You can see here, this is basically virgin land. So we have to put in the culverts and the necessary pipe network for drainage.
So nothing was happening with this land before?
Absolutely nothing. You had in the past probably cows grazing here and for other purposes for agriculture.
But not designated for any specific purpose?
No, certainly not. And this is just one of many of the areas for which we're developing here in Region 6. This Ordnance Fortlands for our current housing area for Region 6 is in high demand because you will recognize the proximity to New Amsterdam, being where it is, the businesses, and being because of the town, the demand for jobs. So the proximity is very important. But we also have currently ongoing infrastructure works for housing areas at Williamsburg, as Kilcoy, Chesney, as well as number 75 and number 79.
So how will these projects help to reduce the demand for housing in this area, in Berbice, on a whole?
This will certainly move the shift, reducing. First of all, let me deal with the benefits from it. You find in New Amsterdam, around New Amsterdam, Kanji, around that area, there are a lot of persons who are renting because, as I mentioned earlier, the opportunity for jobs. So this will help, as I said, 341 allocated. It will help to reduce our backlog. We were here in December in Region 6 to allocate a number of allottees, new allottees, and that was for further east in Region 6.
So all of these new housing developments are for persons you've allocated lands for already?
Correct, that's right. And so we're anxious just like them to finish the infrastructure work so that they can move in, they can commence their construction to own their own home, to have their dreams realized.
And are you pursuing more lands here in Region 6 for housing?
Yes, we are. In fact, we are in negotiation because I said this is phase 2, and as you go a little further, you have phase 3. We are currently in negotiation to acquire another portion of land that will take us close to the main road, and that certainly when that is complete, and that is on our next year program and plans, once that is complete, then this will become certainly a huge housing area for Ordnance Fortlands. But of course, because of limited resources, we have to have this completed in phases.
And who are you acquiring these lands from?
These lands are acquired from Gaisuko.
So they have a huge reservoir of land that they're not using, that you can use for housing?
Well, there's always need for other purposes for land too, because in Region 6, being where it is, you have both farming and you have for agriculture purpose as well as for livestock. But the proximity of where we are at now and the type of land where it is, it's kind of low. So the Gaisuko is not suited necessarily for Gaisuko, so while it's under their purview, this is not an area they've identified as a priority for them for their expanded program. Today's exercise and outreach is a continuation of how we operate as a program, and that is to ensure that we engage as far as practical with those within the communities themselves. This serves as a twofold result because one, to aid in assisting with the real issues that are on the ground that are confronted within the housing and water sectors. And secondly, to also help to ease the amount of persons that are coming to the office for matters that can be dealt with right here within the communities themselves. And so hence, every week, we are out there in various communities, and also with the necessary supporting staff, with the team from Central Housing and Planning Authority, as well as Guyana Water Inc., to listen to the residents, to listen to their matters, to listen to their concerns, and go back to the office and try to resolve them. The feedback from the villagers have been that they've welcomed this approach. They're happy about this, and it's also about bringing government to the people. And this is something we committed to all the citizens as how this PBPC government will operate. And we're continuing with our commitment that we've made to all citizens. And the feedback from the villagers that yes, they are welcoming this, and it also allows them to be able to ventilate their matters. And sometimes not only housing and water, there are other matters that they bring to the fore because they have an opportunity to meet their minister, and then I will forward that to the relevant sectoral minister. That is among the first charge that the President, His Excellency, gave to us, the ministers, is that we want us to be out there, to be engaging, to be listening, to put that attentive ear. But it's not only about listening, but it is also about resolving, and that is equally important of ensuring that persons matter. So there are some that are brought to us that are there hanging for years that will take some time. It will require legal challenges, but we are there. We are here to serve the citizens, and that is what we intend to do. And the approach that we've taken with ensuring that we are engaging the communities will continue. It is a feature every week that we are out within the village, one identified village or in a particular region, and our spread is across the various regions. And I also want to say that housing and water responsibility, well, we have responsibility for delivery of water, expansive water delivery across all 10 regions. But in terms of housing, our housing program is not only about coastland oriented, we also have a target to expand our housing program to the hinterland. And currently we are working on including the 4 main hinterland regions for our program. And so very shortly you will hear more about this. But we can assure all citizens, all regions of our continued engagement.
Do you think you can solve the housing problem? Because if you say you have 70,000 backlog, let's say you do deliver on your 50,000 in the next 5 years, you still have 20,000, and then you have thousands perhaps who will be applying during that 5 year. What's the long-term thinking of solving the housing problem in Guyana?
Well, after this period, certainly there will come a time when we have to reassess what is our priority and how this goes. Of course, in this our first target of 50,000 is to have a number of persons be dealt with, persons who are there, who are active, who really need that house lot. There are some circumstances can change as it goes, but we'll have to reassess. There will come a time too on the issue of availability of lands, and that is why there's a nexus between the opening of new lands through the different road networks that are planned in the various regions. How lands are expected to be made available to us for further housing development. Of course, we have to work in coordination with Ministry of Agriculture because they too need farming land, they need for agriculture purpose, they need for livestock. So we have to strike that balance, but there will always be the demand for lands. There will come a time though, however, even Region 4 itself, when it will become saturated. But we are expecting much more to open up, and persons also have to think of moving out of the city. That is something that in the long term that all of us must plan for. Plan for in the sense that when we are developing other areas across the region, and the spin-off, if you look at our government program, it is not only about Region 4 centered. There are other investments that will come on stream in other sectors, in other parts of the regions, for which employment will be created. So there again, you persons can think about moving onwards. We are also working on the long term of a city that is called a Silica City. You've heard about that before, and that is on the Soesdijk. That certainly we're expected to, as a part of the long term, to develop at a high-end level. But certainly we'll have to keep moving out as we go, because lands are only become available to a certain point.